Welcome to Books Without Borders. Today we're going to be reviewing a book called Liquid Modernity by Zygmunt Bauman. So, what's this book about? The book is a compilation of an essay. The essay begins with a philosophical and sociological speculation about the postmodern era, and then analyses the phenomenon of globalization until approaching the meta level of life, and then circumscribes the most recent thinking on political life, all the way to liquid modernity, overcoming postmodernity itself. Because of this, individual, society, ethics, power, and religion have become terms that incorporate the most important features of the present, the dimension of the transient, in which the lasting gives way to the transient and necessity gives way to utility. The book is divided into 5 chapters: 1. Emancipation, 2. Individuality, 3. Time and space, 4. Work, and finally 5. Community. The first chapter, Emancipation. In the opening chapter, there is a complaint that most people aren't interested in liberating themselves from society, and those who are inclined to do so are scared to take action, as they have no idea what liberation might look like. According to Bauman, freedom means experiencing no hindrance, obstacle, resistance, or any other impediment to the movements one wants to make. As Bauman summarizes the chapter, he stresses that it's up to the individual, as an isolated actor, to find individualized solutions to social problems. The second chapter, Individuality. As Bauman points out, both Orwell and Huxley's dystopian visions reflected their times. They both shared the same fear of individual freedom being reduced to a sham, both believing there is a growing split between remote controllers and the controlled. In summary, the mobility and flexibility of identification that are characteristic of the shopping around type of life are less vehicles for emancipation than tools of freedom redistribution. For that reason, they are mixed blessings. The third chapter, Time and Space. This section presents some of the key features of contemporary cities. Bauman points out that people increasingly believe that they're being stalked, and that there is a long historical trend of people trying to find the source of their misery outside of themselves. Often quoting Richard Sennett, he observes that cities are settlements in which strangers often meet. The encounters are not likely to have a past or future, and as such, they require a particular set of skills called civility. Bauman ends this chapter with a couple of pages describing how modern society values stability and change in a balanced way. The fourth chapter, Work. Among other examples, Bauman cites Henry Ford as someone who epitomized modernity's attitude toward time and work. It was valuable work done today because it drove history forward. Bauman concludes the book by citing Alain Pierrefity's claim that confidence in oneself, in institutions and in others was the common, uniting characteristic of modern capitalism. They all sustained one another. Together, these 3 were the basis of modernity, enabling future investment. Employment enterprise was the most important of these. Today, no one expects to work the same job for the next 10 years, and many of us would rather risk our pensions on the stock market. The precariat, especially, is increasingly subject to the whims of capital. The state seldom intervenes. Bauman emphasizes the power imbalance. And finally, Chapter 5, Community. Bauman summarizes the liberal communitarian debate over the individual and society. The author suggests that these explosive communities can also be called cloakroom communities, which describes their actions to spectacle and high emotions. Alternatively, he calls them carnival communities. The last point Bauman makes is that such communities do not ground individuals or address the destabilizing forces that lead to them. Throughout this book, Bauman examines the shift from hardware-focused, heavy modernity to a software-based, light modernity. As a result of this passage, he argues the human condition has changed profoundly. As global structure becomes increasingly remote and unreachable, and as life politics and human togetherness becomes more fluid, concepts and cognitive frames that narrate individual experience in history must be rethought. This book is dedicated to this task. The book concludes Bowman's study of globalization, the human consequences, and In Search of Politics. Together with Liquid Modernity, this collection offers a brilliant analysis of social and political change from one of the most innovative thinkers today. As I began reading this book, I was a bit skeptical at first. In light of the fact that it was published before the year 2000, I wondered whether it might be more beneficial to spend my time on books that deal with current issues. After reading it, however, my doubts dissipated. The book contains some analysis and predictions that might not really correspond with what we're going through at the moment, but many of the things are applicable to the current state of the world. My favourite part of the book was the emancipation and individuality section, where the descriptions of most of the time were quite accurate for using to explain many aspects of the world at this point, suffering from neoliberalism's betrayal and all the promises it made. My understanding of neoliberalism and the related issues in contemporary society has been clarified and enriched through reading this book. When Bowman articulates his thoughts, he uses a philosophical, literary style of speech. There are certainly no dry words and sentences like you see in social science texts. It might not be everyone's taste, particularly those who prefer a dry, direct, clear style of writing, but I personally liked Bowman's writing. Bowman's book taught me that in order to move towards a more progressive social state, it is necessary to develop new methods of thought and action that account for and accept uncertainty and risk. Despite first accepting that our thinking is pathetically outmoded, the book is quite old now as I mentioned, Bowman sees hope in everyday life, and so do I. In conclusion, Bowman provides little assurance and instead emphasises that we should fundamentally rethink the way we analyse and guide civic discourse. According to Bowman, control is no longer primarily the application of power, rather it is the radical melting of economic controls and the delirium brought on by an excess of choice, uncertainty, freedom and detachment. This book is the stepping stone to understand the modern world in which we are currently living. It not only makes sense about our behavioural tendencies, but it does it in a convincing manner, one where the existing philosophies and theories reverberate and come to life. This book has left me with several ideas to think about, especially one of the closing thoughts. To be truly autonomous and free, a society or individual must question their reality and be able to change it. Individualism has had the same effect on public life as egoism historically did on virtues. We have to be responsible for our reality in order to fulfill our freedom. By shrugging off responsibility somewhere else, you undermine society. You cannot improve society by remaining indifferent or neutral. You must take a stand and speak out against wrong and suffering. I will leave you with one of my favourite quotes. The favourite strategic principles of the powers that be are nowadays escape, avoidance, and disengagement, and their ideal condition is invisibility. If you've liked this video, please check out our channel, where you can find a whole load of other reviews like this one across a number of different titles. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.